Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 100th episode of Hash Rate. My name is Mark Jeffrey, and we're going to do something special today. On this show, we're not afraid of the X-Files. Today, we're going to get weird. We're going to let our freak flag fly. With me is Deeptanshu Prasad, who is the CEO and founder of Quantum Generative Materials. So the guy's playing around making quantum computers. He was one of Toronto's top 20 under 20 in 2015, and he is known for his technological innovations, but also his public discussions about UAPs, including a claimed personal encounter with extraterrestrial beings. So hello, Deep Prasad. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much, Mark. Honored to be here. And, I was mentioning, kind of before, before we started recording, really honored to be part of the Centurion candidate, if you will.
Yes, you are my Centurion.
Right on. Love to hear it. I wanted to make a small correction. Quantum Generative Materials works on materials that some of them could be useful for quantum computers, but we don't build quantum computers. That being said, other than that, thank you so much for the warm introduction. And I'm really excited to talk about whatever it is actually that you're interested in talking about. I think what I really appreciate is that it was the UAP discussion that we were having that attracted you, it seems,
Yeah. Well, I think there was once a time where talking about UFOs, talking about UAPs, as they're now called for those who don't like to say UFO, it was verboten, right? So we had a guy in the 90s named Joe Firmage who found it. About this guy. Yeah,
totally. I've met him. I mean, I've talked to him a couple of times.
So for those who don't know, so he founded a company called US Web, which was kind of a roll-up of all the web shops. And then out of the blue, he basically started talking about an alien encounter that he had. And after that, he became verboten, untouchable. And everybody's like, oh, that's that weird guy, right? And that was like the end of the 90s, early 2000s. So you couldn't really be taken seriously if you brought that up. But now we live in a different age, right? We've got the Tic Tac videos coming out of the Pentagon. We have UAP disclosure. It's here in 2025. We're taking this stuff seriously. It's no longer verboten. So I think it's so. Thank you for being willing to share your experience with us. And I think I probably want to start with your experience because it's sort of Chekhov's gun. We bring out I met aliens. You kind of have to talk about that. So why don't you please tell us about your encounter and what it was like?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I love the sort of reverse order. I will try to keep this super brief. I do this strategically because there's a neuroscience phenomenon that happens every time you think about memories that happen to you. You are affecting those memories, right? So all that caveat emptor and so on and so forth. But basically, a quick description. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about what I publicly told the world, and much.
Yes.
All right, cool.
I mean, I've only know what you've publicly said, so I'm not privy to anything else. So please.
Fair enough. So I guess, long story short, in 2019, February 1st, I was basically working just for context, right? So just, let me just take a step back a second so that people can sort of appreciate what the hell, how crazy this is. Why I would having so much to lose risk my entire scientific and engineering and business reputation and all my social capital and etc. Why the fuck would you do that? Right. Yeah. So for context, I was working on one of the world's first quantum computing companies. I think it was probably one of the first 100, let's say, actual quantum computing startups on the planet, really trying to solve a useful problem. And with that came both lots of awesome benefits, like exposure to the absolute frontier of what we understand as a civilization. In the early 1900s, for example, when we had the quantum mechanical revolution, when Schrodinger and Werner Heisenberg and Einstein really pioneered what would become the first revolution of quantum mechanics and modern quantum mechanics, that led to the semiconductor, that led to lasers, that led to fiber optics, and so on and so forth. And so, what people I think often believe is that that's where the revolution ended, but really there was a second revolution in quantum mechanics, and that revolution happened thanks to Richard Feynman in the late 1980s. So Richard Feynman, complete beast as we all know. 6 years before he died, he literally invented quantum computing. So super brilliant guy, and basically the idea was that rather than developing these semiconductor devices and modern computers, every GPU, as we all know, every CPU, right, uses semiconductors. Rather than using these devices where quantum mechanics is a sort of side effect, an undesirable side effect, these quantum effects on semiconductors because you're making them so small, right? What Richard Feynman proposed was something radical. He said, what if we exploit these quantum effects instead to do computations? Now, there was other people, David Deutsch is another one, of course, who were like formalizing the, quantum Turing complete equivalent languages and proving
Deutsch of the Deutsch proposition mentioned in the Avengers movie.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Same guy.
Yes.
For people who know. The many worlds. He's a many worlds believer, I believe. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. The man has good reason to. I don't blame him. Like quantum mechanics is so weird. It's definitely one totally valid explanation. Like you can't just totally shoot it down or anything like that.
Yep.
So the second quantum revolution was kickstarted by guys like David and Richard Feynman, and the idea was let's manipulate and exploit quantum effects and build entire devices where they are inherently leveraging quantum mechanics and the weirdness and the strangeness that comes with it. And what happens when you do that is you can suddenly model the real world at the atomic level with such precision, far deeper and more accurately than regular computers, to the point that in the next, let's call it 5 to 10 years, we will continue to be able to model more exotic materials for like aerospace applications, better semiconductors, better quantum computing materials. Like there is a singularity loop that we could potentially unlock here. So anyways, this is what I was working on, which was working on how do you develop a quantum artificial intelligence that can develop inorganic solid state materials. So finding the next generation of superconductors or semiconductors or alloys for aerospace or transportation and so on. So now this is all happening sort of in the background. I'm surrounded by every day, surrounded by either venture capitalists or the world leading theoretical physicists. Like that was my day today. Now it's February 1st and it's 2019 and I'm like chilling in my Toronto condo. And, my basically routine was to read papers and write and respond to emails. That's like to very simplify.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Like deep tech founder life, like whatever, like, so very similar to actually kind of like how I'm sitting, by the way, for what it's worth, although I know I have like a background and stuff, but I'm sitting against my headboard just like this with my laptop, just like right in front of me. I wanted to take a break, so I put down my laptop for a second, like just like lift up my phone, which is also actually right next to me right now. I just got this premonition, and I'll skip a whole lot of details. Feel free to ask me questions, just because there's so much to cover. But I get this premonition immediately, it was so weird. I call it download. I always say this because like this word just means so much to me today. It used to be just some random hippie term that made it didn't mean anything at one point, but now it does. Felt like I got like this complete premonition, complete set of thoughts. Imagine if you could like bypass, right? As I speak to you, what is happening, right? I'm modulating the air and creating phonons, and phonons are oscillations of the space-time medium, right? Particularly phonons are oscillation of like the fluid or fluidic medium that
right. You're talking about sounds like phonemes and phonics and consonants. Like that's what you mean, right? Phonons?
Exactly. Sound carriers. That's really all they are, right?
Language. Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to put it, right? And so as like this gets communicated to you, like technically there's a certain amount of information and certain amount of bandwidth that these phonons carry, and like that bandwidth and how much information it carries is based on the amount of entropy in English language or whatever human language is being used, right, to communicate. And so when we speak, like, let's say you have a conversation, coffee chat with a friend, and you're like drinking at a Starbucks or something like that. And like you have all these like takeaways after the hour is over, right? Like you just know that, oh, I talked about this thing with like Jeff or something, or, whatever.
Right.
And so like all that information that your brain is sort of compressing, you retain it over time, but your brain compresses it. And so, but it compresses over time. However, what I got or what I experienced was the equivalent of almost like an hour-long conversation within like a few milliseconds, like the same amount of takeaways. So not every word, but imagine if you just compressed the takeaways of the sentences.
Okay, so you basically get information downloaded to you. This was basically the essence of your encounter. Was you were laying down or you were sitting at your laptop still? I think you laid down, right?
I was sitting. Well, I was still sitting against my headboard.
Okay.
However, the problem was that as soon as I started, like before I could even fully contemplate and understand what was going on with this like download of information, and the information was basically like the way that I communicated, and I could be wrong. Like that's the thing. I'm just translating stuff that I have no idea. Like, really, this is like a human. I feel like a monkey trying to explain like holograms.
Yeah.
Or something.
What was the content of the information that you received?
So the content and information, the beginning, first of all, was that I'm going to experience something far beyond my lexicon, like that. Like, but I didn't get those words. Like, I just knew that was the thought that's being to me, which sounds crazy.
But dude, it's the crazy episode, so I'm just rolling with wherever you want to go, and let's get it out there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And so the immediate thought was just like, you're about to experience what you've asked for, like, which is like meeting these beings. Like I got, so all these thoughts just come to my mind. And before I like can really respond, I realize I'm completely paralyzed, like fully, like head to toe level paralyzed.
Which is typical in a lot of experiencer reports, right? The paralysis is a typical thing that people report.
Huge. Absolutely. And, if you ask a guy like Mick West, like a skeptic or a debunker, right? Like he might say, look, people have reported sleep paralysis for centuries with like demons like jumping on your chest and stuff like that. And I argue two things when it comes to that. First of all, sleep paralysis is very real and probably mundanely explains prosaically most like experiences that I think people like conflate. But I also think that, some of them are legit, authentic experiences. And then third, I also think that we barely have an understanding, even today, of from an epistemological perspective, what constitutes a reality and what does not. I would argue that anything a human observes, if we were to follow a quantum mechanical interpretation to its most serious definition of measurement, right, of what a wave function, like measuring a wave function actually means, and we were to actually rigorously apply that to even dreaming, we would be forced to admit that the only thing that we experience, for example, in a dream is real. Like whatever like while you're dreaming, you can't prove that waking reality is real. And,
so I'm just going to stop you for 1 second here because you bring up a very interesting point that I was going to get to later.
Feel free to interrupt me at any time.
No, it's totally cool. So you're probably familiar with Jacques Vallée. You've heard that? Yes, okay. So Jacques Vallée is this French guy, and he studied UFOs from the 60s up until the present. And in fact, the French guy in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the character of the French guy is based on Jacques Vallée, right? And Jacques Vallée wrote a very important book called A Passport to Magonia, and where he studies the UFO phenomenon. And it's very strange because he basically compares it to encounters with fairies and sort of gnomes and things like that from medieval times up until the present. And he notes that like the UFOs and the fairy stuff, they seem like they're the same thing. right? Which would suggest that whatever this is, it's at least partially in our heads, but also out in the real world, right? Like it's sort of a strange dichotomy. And if you think about it from a quantum perspective, those are not different things, right? Which is what I think you're saying. So I thought it was important to bring that up. So anyway,
I love that connection. That's a super brilliant insight and very interesting, interesting thought. Yeah. So like technically, yeah. What Vallée points out is a very fair observation, which is that regardless of the empirical truth, whether this is a physical manifestation or some psychological hallucination, this expression of the phenomenon, so the paranormal, these super intelligent beings. He points out that every generation, this thing that humans experience, it's always just slightly ahead mimetically of where society is. So it never expresses itself using means that are too far away from the linear combination of the means of the time of that society. So
right. So you see through the lens of what you understand.
Bingo.
Right.
Yeah,
So if you're in medieval England, they're fairies or leprechauns or whatever.
Fairies. Exactly. Yeah.
If you're in the modern days, it's Men in Black or
Bingo.
or the Greys
or aliens. Yeah.
or whatever. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I think Peter said something to me, like Peter Thiel at Hereticon, which I think a lot of our friends have gone to, and he suggested something which was, I agree, which is a possibility, which is that what if it's a psychosocial phenomenon that manifests itself physically? So like it's like not we make it real because it's like that level of psychosis and hyperstition. So like people might right. So
if enough people believe it, it becomes real. Almost like American Gods, like the way Neil Gaiman.
That's actually a great way to put it.
Yeah,
exactly.
If you're familiar with that, yeah, okay. So anyway, I want to get to all right. So you get a download from space, and
I've seen multiple.
Like, what's in the download? Like, I'm just I'm like, what did they give you the Encyclopedia Galactica? Was it Lord of the Rings? Like, what did you get in your head? Was it transparent aluminum? Like, what'd you get?
Yeah. To be quite honest with you, I have no idea what I'm looking at. There's only one thing I can confidently say from this entire experience, which lasted 20 to 30 minutes. So like right after this, like first few seconds, I see like really these three like humanoid beings. They were like 4 feet tall. They were objectively alien looking. Like
holy shit! So you saw beings, and like you're looking at them
literally in my fucking room, like. My fight or flight instinct kicked in.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, this isn't like I wasn't the what's it called, the debunker show, like I forget there's so many debunker shows, but I wasn't like let me just like pull out my like goddamn spectroscopy devices and like do some science. I was like, my life is under threat. Like this is terrifying. What the hell is this?
And okay, I just want to stop you here because like. Are you sure you're not dreaming? How do you basically at this point? I'm probably going, holy fuck, I'm asleep. I'm imagining this, but you seem really you're like a serious person. Like you hang out with Peter Thiel, right? Like you're not like some jackass driving a dump truck in the middle of nowhere. You're like a serious guy. So you're looking at this.
I wonder if I should be doing that. Life would be simpler if I was just driving around, a truck.
Right, but like I tend to take just like you take Air Force pilots more seriously about seeing UAPs because they're in their domain, right? They're not prone to lying. They're serious people where if their brains are disorganized and prone to fantasy, they die. Yeah, your brain is also prone to not.
And other people die too,
right? So so. And you believe that you have actually seen aliens. Does it have like the quality of realness to it that like you and I speaking right now has? Or tell me why you're sure it's real.
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it's there was no. So when we're dreaming, we always know. So imagine think about the last dream you had. I don't know how your experience is. Of course, we're two different people, so. You might have a totally different experience of dreaming. But when I dream, I don't have full sense representations. I have a compressed representation of my senses. I can't smell every single little thing like I can in the real world, right? Where I can smell like a stinky dude or some shit, or you're in a subway in New York, you smell like 100 smells attacking your nose. In a dream, you're lucky if you smell two things, and you'll remember it because it's that rare to have multiple different senses hitting you at once, like the real world. So that was one thing, is that all my senses were totally normal. Like they were just like the real world.
Could you smell the aliens?
Were
they wearing Drakkar Noir?
Well, again, yeah. I could breathe though, with and I could feel myself and, just smell my room like it's just a normal room.
Okay.
So all this regular senses and the awareness that comes with being awake, that was there. That's why just at a bare minimum, it would be very hard for me to believe that this is a dream. It would be, in my opinion, statistically impossible. But that's because but I could be, one could argue that, maybe you're deeply crazy, and you have some crazy psychosis thing that has never been discovered, and I would say fair enough. Until somebody actually proves or disproves, you know what I mean? I have to be intellectually honest, obviously. So caveats emptor aside, though. So that was one thing. Second reason why I'm quite sure is because I'm a lifelong lucid dreamer. You're probably familiar, right, with lucid dreaming?
Yep.
I always know what it takes and what happens when you become aware of your dream. And I tried those tricks. That was one of the first things I did was, am I dreaming? And I did those tests. So first of all, and I also asked myself, am I having sleep paralysis? That was also one of the first thoughts that came through my mind as I experienced this. So first of all, when I have sleep paralysis, and I know a lot of people who experience this too, that this works for them. So if anyone's listening that struggles with this, the best way to get out of sleep paralysis is shake your fingers and toes. So you just have to wiggle, right? If you wiggle them, what basically ends up happening is that your motor cortex wakes up, because sleep paralysis happens when your brain, right, is essentially literally halfway between awake and asleep. And so parts of your limbic system and motor cortex are just whizzing and starting to turn on. So you might as well turn it on completely, or and then it goes away. Your body wakes up. You're now fully aware. You've rebooted, if you will. So I tried that, but I was still paralyzed, which was freaky. That was the first time my trick did not work. So that was another indicator that this was not at least a normal sleep paralysis event. And again, because of all the awareness, my scenes and setting wasn't changing too. That was the third sort of biggest indicator.
Okay.
Was in dreams, one of the first tests I will do is, will the scene change? Can I manipulate it? Can I desire and will shit to happen? And none of that was working.
Okay, so you're looking at these four beings. You got four aliens in front of you. Three of them. What are they? And they look like grays, right? So they got the classic gray look.
Phenotypically, but they weren't exactly how anybody has ever described them before, if that makes sense. So they had the same physiognomy. They had the same
physiognomy. Yes.
Yeah, physiognomy. Yeah.
Physicality. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
physiognomy is something else. Yeah, not physiognomy. You're not feeling bumps on their head to determine their personality. Nothing like that.
Good point.
That's phrenology. God, I'm getting them all mixed up. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what are these guys doing? Are they threatening you? Are they telling you don't be afraid? Are they doing nothing? They got medical shit out? What's going on?
Dude, yeah. So definitely, it seems symbolically relevant more than it does to be taken literally, but I have no idea. I really have no idea what we're dealing with. So I'll just.
So they're doing nothing. They're just.
Oh, they are certainly doing things. Oh yeah. So they started. Oh yeah. I should clarify. So they start immediately, basically beaming these hieroglyphs. They were basically imagine subtitles, just floating
in the air. You got your Apple Vision Pro on, the way things float in that kind of look.
That's a great way to think about it. Right. Except I didn't have any headset on.
Right.
It was just
no headset.
My senses were just being manipulated.
And you're seeing hieroglyphs Like
exactly.
not Egyptian hieroglyphs, I imagine, but something that look like hieroglyphs but aren't hieroglyphs.
Bingo, bingo. It was not a language I could recognize at all. To this day, I have no idea what language that is.
Okay.
I have found the closest, most eerily close match ever in allegedly DIA leaked documents, which we can get to at some point.
What is DIA, Department
of Intelligence? Yeah.
Okay, so basically somebody else saw like UFO stuff. You got your hands on some UFO docs, and you're like, oh yeah, that looks like what I saw.
Yeah, yeah, and it's not just me. It's been out on the internet for like 20 years. I don't exclusively have access to this, like other people do. But the fact that it allegedly came from a three-letter intelligence agency is an interesting tidbit of information of where they were trying to disclose essentially the truth about aliens. It was a attempt allegedly by a intelligence agency, to try to acclimatize the public over many decades. But there's a whole lot of crazy shit around that. So, but anyways, yeah. So I see these hieroglyphs, and you asked me like what did they say, and so on and so forth. The only word that actually showed up at all that was in English, and therefore I could actually recognize it, was the word DNA. And it showed up multiple times, 3 or 4 times. It was so salient, so weird that it was sandwiched between all these like glyphs and so on and so forth. And I still to this day like that word means more and more as a result. I think.
Okay, so basically you get a bunch of information. You don't know what it is. It's in this pseudo hieroglyphic format. Only one glyph makes sense to you, and that's the word DNA. But the rest of it is still a mystery to you. Could you replicate the document that you got? Could you write it down, or is it sort of just lodged in your subconscious? And the answer is no.
You mean the DIA document that I was talking about, or the
whatever got downloaded into your head? Could you write it out? Like did you memorize Lord of the Rings and could you start writing it out? Sentence at a time, or is it something that you felt like it got downloaded to you, but you have no idea what it is?
I have no idea what it is.
Okay.
My theories have evolved. My first guesses were my absolute first proto guess was that this is some kind of. It went from like least plausible to whatever ranges from like plausible to implausible and so on and so forth. One guess was that, and I wrote an article on this. One guess was that there is a mathematically, objectively, maximally information maximally way of representing language and information. There are symbols that like compress the most amount of information physically. Whether it's mathematical or physical, physics-based or scientific or philosophical information, there's objectively one universal, like symbolic language that the universe must, by the laws of physics, be able to pack the most information. And that's just from applying Claude Shannon and like knowing that we can calculate how much information one language embeds versus another. Like the right, like the Chinese alphabet literally encodes far more information per alphabet, like per letter, than like the U.S. The American like alphabet. So I figure that maybe this is like what all universal life like evolves and converges to, like this particular language. Then I figured maybe this is a old language that seeded the Maya people. So basically, they're the people who seeded the ancient Sumerians, the Mesopotamians.
Wow. Okay, we're going straight to Sitchin stuff right away. Okay. I like it.
Yeah.
You're just assuming everybody knows it was seeded, right? So okay, bit of a leap probably for most of the audience, but
Totally.
we will get there. Okay, so basically you're going with the theory that so there were beings who came here and seeded our ancient civilizations.
I wonder because it just looks like when I think about like how the first languages kind of came to be. Sanskrit, for example, which is far more like I tried to learn Sanskrit. It is freaking hard, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so and such a complete and dense language, and so people say it came from the angels. When you look at the ancient Sumerians, right, language, they say it came from these space beings, really. So
the Anunnaki.
Yeah, the
I'm
Anunnaki.
familiar with that. Actually, weirdly, dude, I took the Sitchin stuff. My first novel,
no way.
I ripped. I basically did like a sci-fi for kids thing where I took kind of 12th Planet and Zecharia Sitchin stuff.
Wow,
and,
that's epic.
wove it into a thing, and it was sort of a blend of several things. But that was one of the core ideas. So yeah,
So
I'm
you
familiar
took
with
like Nobiru and Planet X and maybe added
Yep.
like sick. I love that.
I did it in 2004, by the way, which was
nice.
long before Ancient Aliens, right?
Yeah,
Before it was
totally.
hip to be Ancient Alien, right? So I thought I discovered like, this cool little pocket of stuff. I mean, Stargate kind of did it, but they didn't really kind of go all the way, and I went all the way. So that was kind of my claim to fame at the time, anyway. So now everybody's doing it. So whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so go ahead. So you, but I actually I want to jump to let's jump to the present now and the whole UAP phenomenon. We've got people. We've got the Tic Tac video out of the Pentagon. We're now getting released videos of things that operate in our airspace that defy the laws of physics, and it's becoming more and more common. A lot more pilots coming forward talking about seeing things firsthand. Right? It's no longer crazy. It's like, yeah, this shit's happening. We just don't know what it is, or it hasn't been publicly released yet. And then you have people like Tucker Carlson, who's been digging around in it, and he has a very interesting take on it. He's basically, he's been told by people who know like what's going on, like, so what's going on, right? But the people who know what's going on have told Tucker something dark, something that he is afraid to share, and we don't know what that is, but it's something which would like destabilize society. It would depress everyone if they knew. It's something bad, according to him, and he seems to have an idea.
Damn, we're going there, dude. You're really taking me down.
I want to know what's going on, and
you're taking us down to the very end of the rabbit hole. You were like, you know what? Screw the journey that we should take. Like newcomers on. You're like, let's get to the chase.
I'll let you build a journey to get there, but that is where I want to go, right? I'm wondering like what the hell's going on. What does Tucker know? That's kind of where I want to go. And do you have any insight into that? I'll let you answer however way you see fit.
Sure. No, I appreciate that. That's pretty funny. Just because like that is the crux of the problem and the thing that's happening. It's like, why the hell would the U.S. government hide such a big secret? Like that's always the sort of
one more bit of color too. Tucker specifically refers to it as non-human intelligence. He does not say that it's alien. So what is that? Suggests it's Earth grown. There's like other intelligent things here. Like what does that mean, right? Like so. Please continue.
So I love that. Let's actually quickly address that sidebar of language and how the intelligence community uses language to weaponize. Or for better and for worse, whatever the fuck they want to do. How do they use that as a tool, both in our favor and against us? In the basically after Project Blue Book, a number of interesting things happened. One of them was the word UFO was stigmatized almost intentionally. We can go down the rabbit hole of why there's so much evidence and claims.
Sure. We all accept that, I think, at this point. So yeah.
Right. So now this word UAP is sort of like was rolled out about 4 years ago, and it's supposed to reverse the stigma that was created by their own guys. They're using language to write. So it's constantly like we should just ask ourselves, what do we want to call this stuff? And what do they? What do we gain and what do we lose by using these words that have been given to us? We should always ask ourselves that, because it really biases our thinking. Like every average researcher, right? If you call it an unidentified flying object, you're no longer looking at the seas. You are looking at the sky, right? And looking for, is there a USO, right? And so. So anyways, so the whole non-human intelligence, why we don't use alien, it might be even deeper. It might be that there are really extraterrestrial alien beings, and there are other beings too that don't fall neatly into that description at all, and that's why NHI is used. So there could be, this could be the thinking that the intelligence agencies have to go through, and what Tucker is likely reflecting the surface of a deeper wave of, you know what I mean? Like Tucker might be taught to use the word non-human intelligence because that's what the intelligence agents that he's talking to and the deep state people, use. But that's like, that's all I'm saying. If that makes sense.
Okay, so you think it's sort of a linguistic trick? They basically are talking about aliens, but they just want to be sort of linguistically correct. And
I think aliens are a deep part of the mix. Yeah, and
okay.
and just using NHI or any other word lets them control how we perceive it, and we should be careful. When we
Okay.
do, and there's so much we can say about that. Like, there's a whole lot to say there. But anyways, like, going back to the main question though, what is it
Yep.
that Tucker is so like freaked out about? I obviously have to be careful about what I say here, or what I think I might know, or what I know, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
But what I imagine he's referring to, given what I believe and know, is that I believe he's referring to this idea that perhaps the intelligence community and the people within the deep state, within the military industrial complex, who the small number of people, it's a very small number of people for what it's worth, probably in the hundreds, maybe a couple thousand, who actually know what the hell is going on with UFOs. I think what he's implying is that they have concluded that we are basically humanity, we being humanity, are undergoing some kind of insane alien colonization program, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
What might I mean by that? When you look at like one of the most like interesting tactics about colonization, whether it's like let's just say British colonization, how did they create French colonies and Indian colonies, and why did America have to branch out, and so on and so forth? So what was so good about the British Empire that enabled their colonies, like their ability to colonize so many people? And there's really three characteristics, but one of the characteristics was that they were able to divide and conquer. They would weaponize and empower and arm, both sides of whoever they would try and colonize. So they would go to India, for example. They would arm some Muslim empire, and then they would arm some Hindu empire that's warring. Neither parties would get weapons nearly as advanced as what the British had, but they did get weapons, and they would kill each other, weaken each other, and then the British would come in. What I believe Tucker Carlson is talking about, and this is just my personal opinion, is that I think that these agencies have concluded a very long time ago that these super advanced beings are playing all sides. They're playing both the Americans and the other superpowers, the Russians and the Chinese. And there is something more like deeper and more sinister going on than what we would hope from an advanced civilization or advanced type of life form to be, if that makes sense. Yeah, feel free to ask questions. I know.
Well, so this is just your theory. You're not getting this from somewhere?
I am getting it from, so my theory is a average of what I hear from like people who are talking to Tucker, all the way to my own personal beliefs. This is an average of many of those things. And having spent 6 years plus in the space and talking to other people who don't talk to Tucker, who are also government officials around the world, and so on and so forth. There's just a lot of things that have personally informed this. Yeah. Conclusion.
So you've probably got some connections I don't. I'll tell you where my brain went, because
please.
And I'm just a guy out here guessing, so I don't know anything.
No,
but
it's all good.
I'll give you where my brain went. So I am familiar with Zecharia Sitchin and his work, and the thesis that the Anunnaki, so aliens from another planet, came here and basically were mining gold and had a revolt, right? And then they saw these like ape-like creatures kind of walking around. They said, let's like upgrade them with some of our DNA so that we have a slave class that will go and mine the gold for us, right? That's the story. That's what the Sumerians say, by the way, in their record, right? This is what they call them gods, but that is the story, right? So,
and they're the first ancient civilization. Like, we shouldn't just take this shit lightly, regardless of how crazy the
This is their myths, right? So they did write this down. We do have it written down on tablets, so it's a primary source. So, so if that's true, right, that they did genetically upgrade us, is there any sort of is there anything in our genetics that would suggest that? And it turns out there is. There is a specific gene, I believe it's number 2 or chromosome, which has the hallmarks of having been edited. And I'm not a geneticist, but I've heard this, and people debate this too. People are like, oh no, but there are a lot of people who say that doesn't occur in nature. It does look like there was gene editing. So my brain went when I heard this from Tucker that this would have to come out if there were full UFO disclosure, which would have religious implications, right? Like it would disprove some major world religions, causing some people to freak out, and so that's why they keep it under wraps. That's where my brain went. I don't know anything, but that was what I thought.
That's pretty much what I'm saying too. Like what I think the world ending, like Peter Thiel definition of apocalypse type, right? Like
yeah,
the apocalyptic outcome here that makes everybody, shit their pants and stop disclosure from happening, no matter how deeply they want to tell the American people, right? Is this idea that, holy crap, what if it turns out that we're telling people point blank that pretty much most of the major religions were purposely started by super advanced beings to control and manipulate us and keep us weak? That would be
okay. I'm just saying the religions. I'm just saying the Sumerians wrote down what they did because that's what they saw happen, right? It wasn't like a plot by the aliens to, they didn't go and then go, ha, let's make some fake religions. Like that part, I'm not really. I just think those other religions happened because they happened, and they didn't have the benefit of the primary sources from the Sumerians, right? So.
Fair enough.
I am
saying something. Fair enough. I am saying explicitly in my case that, or suggesting that I believe at least some people within the intelligence community are very do think that competing religions, competing races get help from the same kinds or like similar types of races, advanced extraterrestrial races.
Okay, let's take a step back because I'm actually curious as to sort of. The overarching viewpoint. Like what I'm also curious about is like what's going on? Like who's running these craft? Is it just one set of aliens? Is it aliens first of all, or are they reptilians from our deep past? Did the dinosaurs like evolve?
Yeah.
Are there sleeve stacks with UFOs? Right? Like is it that, or are they aliens? And if they're aliens, or is there more than one? Like and if so, how many? And why are they here? Like what's sort of the overarching thesis of this whole thing? Do you have a theory on that?
Again, just personal theory. I could be wrong here. But I do believe that there are certainly physical advanced species that are uniquely separate, seemingly different alien species from different star systems that are so far apart that they are just, their own unique civilization. But then there's also probably like evidence of like really crazy interdimensional life and stuff that we don't have like necessarily the words or physics to fully understand yet, but we know that they exist.
Yeah.
And they have their own, influence and so on. Maybe they're so smart that they can even mimic like other advanced alien life forms that are advanced to us, but too dumb, even dumber, like the difference, because like there's probably hierarchies of intelligence realistically out in the universe, and I think it's worth mentioning though that no matter how many bodies we recover, whether it's a reptilian or a giant mantis looking creature or a giant human like that looks like a fucking Aryan, like the thing that could have sparked entire like genocidal movements. Like imagine if that was a whole species.
Right.
So like really like
So you think we've recovered bodies first of all? Because that was a bit of a leap. You're like, we recovered bodies. Like we haven't even talked about that. So in your mind, do you know something? Absolutely. Are you just like, do you know something? Or
I don't know anything that's illegal or classified, or anything more than what you could probably get access to.
Well, we have had people in Congress, testify under oath that we have recovered alien craft, non-human intelligence craft, and non-human bodies. So
and I believe them.
It feels legit to me. So yes, I do agree with that. We got something.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I'm just and I would go so far as to say that of those bodies, despite allegedly those bodies being very different species and types of life forms, like a handful, we will never be able to know. And I think this is what is a problem still today. Like no matter how advanced these secret alleged aliens programs are, that or that the government is running, basically, right? Or like the men in black. Like, let's probably more accurate. They will not be able to verify whether these aliens really come from where they say they are, right? Like, how do we know that we're not dealing with some super, as Jacques Vallée says, some crazy, super advanced, multidimensional being that like fakes and pretends to be from a different planet, but it's really higher dimensional, far more intelligent, and it just comes up with all these stories.
It's just a trickster.
Yeah, exactly.
For whatever reason. Yeah.
You got it, exactly. We literally will never know. We can't know right now, at least with our current level of technology. And paradoxically, we may never know because there's always going to be some sort of asymmetric intelligence gap, no matter how much smarter we get as a species.
Yeah. Well, so that's pretty interesting. So, and yeah, I'm glad you brought us back to Jacques Vallée because I actually want to talk about one other thing here. Are you familiar with the airship phenomenon from 1896?
Yeah, that was crazy. Totally, that was wild.
Okay, let me read a little bit of this because I think it really gets at the heart of, when we talk about this stuff, it does feel like some weird mashup of fairy stories and physical phenomenon, but it's not really one and it's not really the other, right? Totally. Even your own story is sort of weirdly ethereal, right? They didn't leave like a phaser behind, right? You didn't have any physical proof, right? But they look technological, but they didn't leave behind anything technological. So let me just read this really quickly for those who are not familiar. At the turn of the 20th century, specifically between late 1896 and mid 1897, a wave of mysterious airship sightings swept across the United States. The phenomenon began November of 1896 in Sacramento, California, when hundreds of witnesses reported seeing a bright light, likened to an electric arc lamp, moving slowly across the night sky. Remember, back then there's no airplanes, right? Totally. So everybody's like, "What the fuck is this?" Right?
Yeah.
Over the following months, sightings spread eastward, with reports emerging from states like Nebraska, Texas, Illinois, and beyond, totaling thousands of accounts, potentially over 100,000 witnesses. Now, the descriptions varied. Some saw only lights. Others detailed large maneuverable vessels, 150 to 200 feet long, equipped with propellers, wings, or searchlights, and moving at speeds far exceeding the capabilities of known airships of the era, balloons, which topped out around 5 to 7 miles per hour, compared to claims of 135 to 150 miles per hour, which for back then, that was like, warp speed, right?
Totally.
So now there were some landings that the airships did, and they were always really weird, right? So there was one.
Like, how do we know that something really intelligent didn't just 3D print airship that's faster?
Yeah. So first of all these things are like Jules Verne fucking things, right? Like they're right. It's through the lens of the day, right? And everybody saw something different. And I was going to read some of the other encounters, which I still might, but basically, like, the ship stopped and landed, and some people talked to the inhabitants, and each time it was like totally different what was in the ship and who the people were, and so it like morphed and changed. So what do you make of this? What are your comments on it?
So I think that whatever it is, like, because of astronomical scales, whatever intelligent life form can get here, either, in my opinion, there's two extremes. They're either just on the precipice, they just figured out anti-gravity, and they're dumb enough to come here, like, with maybe like no protection or something. Like they're just figuring out their technology, which is why they crash, which is why we can perform UAP crash recoveries, which is why, as David Grush, the military intelligence official who testified to Congress under oath, right, claimed that there are programs that recover these crashed UAPs. Like, I think that if a UAP is crashing, it really is because it's been built by like something like us, like maybe a few hundred years from now, or like, even like with AGI and stuff like that around the corner, it's really not that hard, in my opinion, to like contemplate that we figure out faster than light travel, even in the next century, like with like the way that AI and physics is headed. So that's one class, and maybe the other class is like they're so advanced, like they're probably thousands or millions of years advanced than really anything, or they may not even be from this universe. Like, how do we know that our universe or even our multiverse is the only cluster of realities that can support life, and there isn't some other kind of substrate of space-time reality that we're not aware of, that goes beyond even what our language and knowledge of physics and our physical experience of life and existence? What if it's something beyond that? Like, because like we experience existence with axiomatic consistency, which is weird. That's not owed to us. It's not owed to us that the sky is blue every time, and if the sky turns green, there's some physical rational explanation. That wasn't owed to us. We didn't have to live in that kind of reality.
So by that you mean the consistent laws of physics.
Bingo. That never are wrong. That are always correct, no matter what. They just always are true. And so reality, like that, because like physics, right, is like technically all physical theorems and physical laws, because they are just mathematics in the end of the day. And mathematics, the cool thing is that you can have totally different axioms and axiomatic logic, meaning that you can change one basic law about the axiom that defines math. Like, let's say I change how addition works in one universe. That would change all the physical equations, and that would change the logic of that universe, if that makes sense. So, like, how do we know that there aren't all these illogical universes and realities around us that life can exist in? And anyway, so I can imagine that some life just like they know that we literally will never be able to comprehend them as they are. So they always like figure out, like they read our minds, they look at our memes, and then they just like have like an autonomous way of doing this to multiple, civilizations that are advancing in our universe. Like, what if we're just part of this big program? I don't know.
Yeah, no. I think what you're saying is really fascinating because there is an element to this that feels the ethereal, dreamy, mythological piece of this. It's like when they show us technology, they're kind of laughing at us because it's not really technology.
Yeah, totally.
It's like, right, and it's almost like they're laughing at us because it's like, oh, look at you children in your little consistent physical universe playpen, right?
Exactly.
You don't know what's possible. Like these laws are completely plastic and bendable at
Totally.
sort of higher levels, and we're just messing with you.
Exactly.
Right? Like it feels like that a little bit.
Absolutely. They must see like the meta reality or something where like they can manipulate something that manipulates reality. Like imagine if you're intelligent enough, right? You will eventually maximize your understanding of the rules of the game. Like if you last long enough as a species, right? You'll probably find every exploit possible in the game. So
very interesting. Yeah. So let me ask you about Elon. So
sure. Yeah, I don't know him, by the way. You might, but I don't.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just curious what you think, right? Because Elon. Okay, so Elon has basically said, I've never seen any sort of alien anything. Yeah. I own SpaceX. I own a bunch of satellites. We have never once photographed a UFO, and I would think that if there were UFOs, I would know about it, and I don't. Now, okay, so Elon could be lying. My guess, though, just sort of watching him, is that he's not lying.
I agree. He's not lying.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
So the question is like, would he know? And I mean, I think if these were physical craft from another world and they were coming here with some regularity, like he's got the biggest border checkpoint, planetary border checkpoint that we are aware of in history, and he's seen nothing. So that sort of feels like there's not like a lot of physical metal starships coming from star fleets of other galaxies, right? So what do you think? What do you make of Elon in his position?
Yeah. So first of all, super glad that we actually brought up Elon, because he's a big part of this mix and will be a big part of the puzzle, in my opinion. It already is. I mean, let's address the first part for a second. Is he like in a position to know? And he said, of course, if what he said specifically, which I disagree with, frankly, is I think he's being too optimistic and too like he believes the other party is being too nice, like or playing by the same honest rules that he plays by, which is a fundamental mistake. So he said that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and so on, his competitors technically, they would all tell him if they had recovered alien craft. I think right off the bat, that's just not going to happen.
Probably bullshit. I agree with you on that. That's not true.
Why would you? Like, dude, right? Yeah. Like, that's probably their last remaining ace up their sleeve today. Elon has ate all their lunch, and between Elon and Palmer Luckey, they're fucked. So, like, they really will only have one asset left. Like, and if that's gone, dude, they're cooked. Like, you know, so
right.
I think so. Number one, they've been around for decades, so they have deep state connections, lobbies, and they have generals who work for them, generals who have security clearances and need to knows, because it's not just enough to have a security clearance, right? That's TSSCI, top secrets, right? Secure compartmentalized information. You can have above top secret, but then even then, you have to have a need to know. So, like, you could be like the most high-ranking general in the entire military apparatus and still not have a need to know.
You could even be the president, according to some reports.
That's legally true. It's a definite fact, a verifiable fact, absolutely. And that's the premise of like how this stuff could easily be hidden from Elon. Like, he may just not have a need to know. Simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, there are rumors that the bigot list, which is the list of people who do have a need to know, it's less than 800 people in America that actually know exactly where the coordinates are, right? The location, GPS address of each craft, what they are, and even within that 800, each person, most of those people will only know their own piece.
It's like compartmentalized.
Bingo. One of them could be a Bob Lazar type fellow who's like literally just a freaking crazy inventor that's been picked off by the Men in Black. Like, we're going to destroy your life, but you know, you'll get to learn the truth about the universe. Like that, you know, they're going to.
The Bob Lazar thing is very fascinating. That's one of the most credible.
I agree. Super
reports.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So basically, for those people who don't know, there's a guy who named Bob Lazar, obviously, who before we all knew about Area 51. Like, I think we know about Area 51 because of Bob Lazar, right?
Correct.
Like,
so and it was confirmed 30 years later by the U.S. government, or 20 years.
So before, like back when Area 51 was a secret, Bob Lazar was just like a science guy that got hired by the government to go work there, and he basically worked in reverse engineering UFOs. And then he started talking about it to a reporter called George Knapp, I think his name was.
I know George Knapp really well.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you know George. Yeah, so this was like maybe 30 or 40 years ago, and George Knapp started reporting on it, and the government was initially like, don't talk about Area 51, you know, threatened everybody. And basically, Lazar even went so far as he described in detail what he was working on and predicted an element on the periodic table that hadn't been discovered yet and turned out to be real like 30 years later.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so now the element skeptics, and I would agree with the skeptical take there, is that you could argue that, okay, I'm just going to extend the 92.
Right. I mean, I was going to ask you about that because it's like, well, look, there's a hole there. That's my magic element, right?
Right. Now
it's vibranium. It's right there.
Exactly. But now, if he told us the exact island of stability and what that looks like, and maybe there was some sort of like quantum field theory equations that explain why these nuclei are stable, that would bolster his.
No, he did not do that. Just right.
Exactly. He did not do that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's like a strike against him.
Right. But now I will say, a guy like Elon, like who might just play devil's advocate just because he's a contrarian, he might say to somebody like me or you, he might say, you know what? Like, why would Bob have to know all of those details? Bob was not hired to be a theoretical physicist. He was hired to be a tinkerer, inventor. There's no way he would even be able to know how to write down those equations. You would have to have a team. You don't get to reverse engineer an alien craft with one guy doing everything. So
that makes sense. That actually makes sense. Yeah.
So it's almost unfair, right, in that sense, frankly, to expect Bob to even know these things. I'm just saying we don't know those things. That's all I'm saying. But if Bob Lazar is telling the truth, those formulas are classified as hell. And Mark Andreessen did say, right, that he learned just a couple of years ago that we can actually classify entire fields of math and physics, right? He did know that.
He did say that, yes.
And we learned that very recently that we used to do that. So just saying, like, this could easily be a formula that's classified if this exists. So, but anyways, all that to say though, taking a step back, Yeah, is that like what? Yeah, I guess like when it comes to like Bob Lazar and all these people who are like talking about what's been like recovered and so on, I think yeah, we start to see that. So when it comes to Elon, there's a need to know, and let's just assume that he doesn't have the need to know. Then the only other option is that he has the Starlink thing. That's his argument, right? That like he's also, as you said, like the checkpoint. I like that, the space checkpoint.
Yeah.
But like, let's analyze that carefully. So, in terms of the payloads and the distribution of what payloads are being launched in each SpaceX Falcon 9 vehicle, it's typically a split between commercial payloads like Planet Labs or companies like mine. We launched a payload with Elon too, like a year ago, and it'll be private defense, DoD, Space Force payloads as well. And then, of course, there's Starlink. So you have three categories, right? You got commercial startups, and commercial startups have, the sensors that they do, but commercial startups all are regulatory, like regulated, like deeply. So, for example, that included us, and that includes us. So, like even now, as we operate our satellite in space, or remote sensing imager, it's the hyperspectral low Earth orbit and stuff. We have NOAA license restrictions on it that NOAA gave to us. If you launch from India, you have to deal with ISRO license restrictions on what pictures you can take, what pictures you can download. But in our case, for example, we're as just one example, right? Like we're not allowed to take a picture of Israel and disseminate it under 5 meter resolution. 5 centimeter. So we would get in a lot of trouble if we did that.
Sure.
Yep. So the payloads, the class private payloads, it's not a guarantee from Elon's perspective. He absolutely is not guaranteed to know if they're even seeing UFOs because there are restrictions and regulations on those companies. They might go to jail if they tell him. That's
Right.
just a fact of the matter, including for me. Like I can't just even though I used his rocket to put up a satellite, right? I can't just like disseminate a picture of Israel even to him,
Right.
like for under 5 centimeter resolution. And that's just of a country we know. Forget a fucking like potential alien that hasn't been acknowledged. Like
Yeah.
so and so that leaves the other two categories, which are DoD and Space Force and U.S. government payloads. They're absolutely not going to give him anything, tell him anything. That's like literally just
Sure.
compliance, regulatory classifications, all that good stuff. So that leaves Starlink. That's his only option. And he mentioned they've never had to dodge. First of all, he's said a couple things. They've never had to dodge a spaceship.
A UFO. UAP. Sorry, I forgot the new lingo. Kids are using these days.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So, it's worth mentioning that, like, if you can travel, if you can get here, so the closest star to us is Proxima Centauri. And, as the simulation overlords would have it, Proxima Centauri is 4.2 light years away, or 4.2. So, which is pretty hilarious.
Douglas Adams. Yep.
Absolutely. Right. So, closest star, and it's the closest planet to us too. That's other than Pluto, like the first planet outside of our solar system is in the Proxima Centauri star system, and it's called Proxima Centauri b. Not very creative, but yeah. So let's say so any civilization that can come to us has to travel around the speed of light, or half the speed of light, or some level. Let's just say, and that's Proxima Centauri though, but like the average star from us is millions of light years away.
Yeah.
Like what I mentioned is an anomaly, right? Like, but most stars are very far away.
We don't have warp drive. We're fucked. Nobody can go anywhere. It takes like centuries or thousands of centuries to go anywhere.
Bingo, exactly. And so let's say you're just like some sort of like ivory tower physicist who says, you know what? Einstein said that classical macroscopic bodies can't be accelerated faster than the speed of light. Therefore, we can never detect or expect anything to reach that. So let's assume that we have advanced civilizations that are traveling at 0.99 the speed of light, which, and they can never go
Still
past
pretty
that.
schlumpy by Star Trek standards, but you can at least go somewhere.
Absolutely, very much NGMI vibes, as they say.
Galactic NGMI vibes.
Exactly, galactically NGMI, galactic L. So at 0.99 C, that's still more than 100 times faster than what a Starlink satellite operates at. So, and much, much, much faster than what it can detect anything at. So, like, much, 1,000 times, thousands of times faster than what most advanced military sensors could ever detect. So, like, it doesn't even. There's no world where he's dodging an advanced alien spaceship. He would be lucky if you could detect them. Like, they could easily outmaneuver and hide just because.
Well, we've seen how fast the Tic Tacs move, right? So
They
he's
move so
piling
fast.
around those janky ass Starlink satellites. They're sort of
You got it.
1960s technology jacked up a little bit, but
Fun.
pretty much that's what it is.
Exactly.
And
And
you
on
got these
top of
things that
that,
defy the laws of physics at will, and zip around wherever they want, and
yeah.
make right angles in the sky without any. They don't care about inertia. So
Yeah, the analogy is a Starlink satellite
yeah,
to an advanced alien species would be like a man walking on a bridge, right? And you're in a Porsche 911 going like 200 miles per hour. Like, there's the man, which
yeah.
is a Starlink. So it's super fast for sure. And the other point to note is that each Starlink satellite has laser link interlink comms, but it does not have state of the art infrared sensors, does not have state of the art hyperspectral sensors. And hyperspectral sensors are what my startup launched previously and what we hope to launch further in the future. So they are not equipped to even be proper space object detecting sensors.
Got
Right?
it.
So,
Okay. Well, listen, Deep, we're out of time.
hey,
So before we go, do you want to
it's
plug
such a pleasure,
anything?
Mark.
Yeah,
Uh,
my pleasure. Would you want to plug anything like a website, product,
oh yeah, so we
X
will
handle?
be throwing. I'm glad you asked. We are. I am throwing San Francisco's first UAP hackathon. It's going to happen April 18th to April 20th on the USS Hornet. It'll be on www.sf-uap.com. So check that out in the next couple of weeks, and would love to see somebody
A
there.
UAP hacker? Are you guys like reverse engineering alien craft? Like what are we hacking?
The goal is to create tools to accelerate this research and study, and ideally the reverse engineering of UFOs
Yes.
acceleration too.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Anything else you want to plug?
That's it for now. Thanks so much, man. It was so fun talking about this.
Deep Prasad, thank you so much for being my 100th guest. This has been absolutely fascinating. This show is everything I hoped it would be. And you shared your personal experience without fear. So I have to highly commend you on that. And I hope we can do this again sometime. So,
absolutely.
All right, man. My name is Mark Jeffrey. This has been Hash Rate, and we'll see you all next time. Unless aliens get us.